Hello everyone, I'm joined today with Catherine and Joe from Surrey County Council, and this is another one of our bite-sized videos, and today we're going to be talking about the draft plan stage for an EHCP along with the actual plan. So obviously you've sent in your questions and Catherine and Joe have very kindly offered to answer them for us. So I think the best thing to do in the first instance is to get you both to introduce yourselves, if that's okay. So, Catherine, did you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi there, Leanne. Lovely to see you again, and thank you for the opportunity to answer some questions on the draft plan and the plan.
And did you want to just
sorry.
say what your thoughts? No, that's fine.
Catherine Everett, North East Education and Inclusion Service Manager. So I oversee the support that goes into our North East schools. Apology.
That's okay, perfect, thank you. And Joe, did you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Leanne. Joe McSherry, I'm the Education and Inclusion Service Manager and I cover the Southwest. Brilliant,
thank you so much. So the first questions are around the draft plan, and so I'll just start going with the questions, and then you can both sort of chip in as and when you want. So the first question, and it's a question that we do hear quite a lot, is who decides which schools will be consulted with at the draft plan stage?
Yeah, shall I take that one, Joe?
Yeah.
Brilliant, thanks. So consultations will be sent to all schools that are identified as meeting the needs of the child. And I think that's really important to say because that's part of our legal duty. And a lot of this is tied up in legal duty. And we do want to listen to families very closely. However, there is an underlying need to consult with any school that can meet the needs of the child. So in addition to that, any parental preference must be consulted with as part of the process. And the local authority will always consider the impact of any travel on a child going to school and will ideally be looking for placements closest to home in order to keep the child actively involved in their local community. So that's a real consideration for us. This also allows the best outcomes for developing and maintaining friendships and effective adult outcomes in the child's local area. So that's why we do that.
Brilliant. Okay. Thank you so much. And sort of following on from that, should parents be informed of the schools that are being consulted with?
Yeah, well, Joe, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, but I was just thinking as well that it might be important for us to mention, Catherine, that we're speaking today in response to the position that we're actually in at the moment. And as many people will know, there has been this green paper that's come out from the government that may well change things in the future. So perhaps listeners need to be aware that we are anticipating some changes in future, but we're responding really to what is in place at the moment. So, you know, just for the listeners to be aware of that really, and that, you know, we may need to update this presentation for everybody at a later date. So we're happy to do that, Leanne, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, perfect.
So just coming back to your question, Leanne, about should parents be informed about which schools are being consulted, I'd like to say that the local authority would want to make every effort to make sure that the family are fully informed of the outcomes of any consultations that are actually sent to any schools or indeed colleges or other training providers. And that any communication that we have would, as always, come through our case officers.
Thank you so much. And so another question which we do hear very, very often. So what happens if the schools consulted with respond that they are either full or that they can't meet the child's needs?
Yeah, so I think essentially in that case we would need to widen the search, but more often than not we are going back to schools and challenging the responses they're giving. So if they're saying they're full, we will check. If a school is 10% over its capacity, which is within, you know, the legal guidelines that we can speak to them about. So we will always challenge, and that's the same for any school providing us with a response. If, as I say, we feel and the parents feel that it's a preference. So, but as I say, we'd need to widen the search, and some of our areas border other local authorities, so we do sometimes space slightly out of area. but over the border if it's a slightly more local placement than going into one of our Surrey schools. So that just sort of gives you a bit of context, tying in with what I said earlier about the local placements and keeping kids in their local communities, children and young people.
No, that's brilliant. That's really interesting to hear, actually. No, I think that will be, you know, for families, sometimes they sort of hear that, but they don't know, you know, all the other stuff that's going on behind the scenes, as it were.
Yeah.
So that's really great. And so what happens when a final plan is to issue where a type of school in Section I is not, I'm going to completely reword that again because that was complete gobbledygook. I'm so sorry. So basically, what happens when a type is named in Section I of a plan as opposed to a school? So if there's no named school, how should parents be kept up to date during this period while obviously a school's being, you know, searched for?
Okay, Leanne, in the majority of cases, the plans are finalised naming a school as part of our key stage transfer process. However, there are occasions where all places have been filled and we may need to finalise a plan naming the type of school in order to allow the family to have their right of appeal. So if no school has been named and the child is out of school, we would work with the family to provide some support through our access to education team, who are our preferred providers. Or if they're on a roll with the school through Surrey Online School, that would be also part of the process. Families should be kept updated on a regular basis on the progress of all the consultations with the schools, if indeed there was a type named. And in most cases, in reference to the key stage transfer process, this is likely to sort of be around the weekly basis. That's what we're aiming for. If this is the case where it is not part of the key stage transfer process, the in-year admissions team will be working with the priority groups to place children in schools in line with the needs of the child. But in all cases, if a child is missing education, we would talk to families about how the school and our support services can continue that access to learning whilst there isn't a school in place.
Brilliant, thank you so much. That's really helpful, because I think it can be one of those really anxiety-ridden times if, you know, waiting for a school place. It's really great to hear what's, you know, what the kind of process is, I guess. And then my next question, I think we've kind of already covered it, but I think it's important just to ask as well, because obviously parents' preference school is of course important. So what happens if a parent's preferred placement is a mainstream school and that school responds saying that they cannot meet needs?
So I think I'd like to step in with that one. I think, bearing in mind, as Jo said previously, we're in the middle of consultation regarding the Green Paper. I think there's going to be a lot about responsibility within that and working with mainstream schools within that. So I'm hopeful that there's going to be some really positive information coming through the consultation. And just to put it in context, we're recording on the 29th of April today. As far as the answer to the question is concerned, in law, parental preference for mainstream has to be prioritised. And we would always challenge any provision to make any reasonable adjustments or appropriate adjustments to meet need. And this can include transition support or provision of additional physical resource to allow the school to allow access for the child. So we can do that through our properties team. So there's a lot we can be doing, and we will always work with schools and meet with schools to see what can be done if it is a strong parental preference or any parental preference.
Brilliant. No, that's really great to know. Thank you. And yeah, I mean, we've already covered this really in the other one. If a parent's preferred placement says they're full, but it would be, you know, what we've just mentioned earlier, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and I think we've answered that slightly fuller. We do have some documentation that supports this recording, and as I said, any plan numbers that can go up to 10% over their planned numbers. So as I say, again, we'd work with the school. We do really work very hard to promote positive relationships with the schools and families, to be able to think imaginatively about how we support children into the school. particularly where it's, you know, a strong voice of the child that's being heard, or they're moving with their peers, or you know, a young person with autism not wanting to change their cohort. So a lot of things come into play, but we would always be wanting to have those more detailed conversations with schools.
Brilliant, thank you so much. So parents have heard that there's going to be a progress tracker developed, so that will mean that parents can see exactly what stage their case is at. And parents are always asking, when will this be offered to families?
Shall I take that one?
I think it's your key piece of work.
It is a
yes.
very big bit of my work that takes up a lot of my time, Catherine, indeed. We as a local authority have been spending quite a lot of time developing a data system that provides the whole local authority with a single view of the child. So this will incorporate social care, education, and there will be involvement with health on that as well. And the aim is that we will have that system introduced for us as a local authority from September this year. And as you quite rightly mentioned there, Leanne, it is the intention that as part of that build and part of that system, what we're hoping to do is to have some live information available to children, young people, their families, and indeed schools to check the progress of the development of an EHCP, for example. It is under development at the moment, and it's unlikely that the parent part of that portal is going to be available in September, but we're anticipating that it will be available. We haven't got a set date for that yet, but it's likely to be, we're hoping, in the new year at the latest.
Brilliant. Well, I think I'm very excited about this. I think it's going to be a really, really exciting development for families. So and I think, well, at a later date we'll do probably another video, describing this in a more detail and things like that.
Yeah.
So
and just on that, Leanne, it's worth saying that we will be able to do some demonstrations of those, both the process that the local authorities see, and what we call the parent delegation portal. That's, we'll be able to delegate rights to parents to actually see parts of the process. Obviously not all of the information in the system, but they would be able to see that process. So it's worth families looking out for those demonstrations.
Absolutely, and we were at Family Voice, we're going to be working with you to sort of develop those, so we will provide further details when they're available, but very exciting.
I think we've also been having some really interesting conversations about how we can be really imaginative about that. So what more we can do, and I think Joe and I are really sort of running away with this, and letting our imagination run away with what it could be like for families. So it's really good to see all of Joe's hard work coming to fruition. It's really good.
Brilliant, thank you so much. So the next question is around co-production of the plan. So families often report that co-production meetings don't seem to be routinely offered. Why is this, and at what stage should such a meeting take place?
Okay, so I think this co-production has been being rolled out for about a year, and has been an offer to families. Some families choose to take it up, some don't. When an application has been made for an EHCP, and we have to make a decision to issue a plan by week 6 of the 20-week process, a co-production meeting should then be held following that decision. So a family can ask for a co-production meeting if they're not offered at week 6, when the decision has been made to issue a plan. If the decision is made to not issue a plan, a way forward meeting should be offered to the family. So either way, if you get a yes or a no, you should have a meeting held with you to say, this is why we said no, this is where you can go for extra additional support, and this is why we said yes, and these are the teams that are working with you to write a plan. So that, yeah, I think that covers off that question actually. So yeah.
Brilliant. No, yeah, absolutely. And just so if a family wasn't offered one, they can
contact the team. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. No, that's brilliant. And So in terms of, so obviously within the plan we have section A's. So for families watching this who don't know what section A is, it's sort of all about the child or young person. So who decides what goes into section A of a plan?
If you want to take that one, Jo.
Yeah, sure. The family will write section A with the support of our case officers. There is guidance available for families on that, and we can make that available to the listeners here. Essentially, the role of the section A is to outline the family experience, so it's important that we capture the family views in that area.
Thank you so much.
And I think it's also important, sorry Leanne, to
That's
say
all right,
at this point that we are working with a number of partners to develop the paperwork, and we're, again, the green paper is saying that there's going to be a national paperwork that's available. However, as a step towards that and being more person-centred, we have been working on developing paperwork for about a year now. And as part of that, there will be specific guidance for families, and I know you've been involved in the discussions about that. So once that paperwork is rolled out at the beginning of May, which, as we've said, we're on the 29th of April, be next week, be rolled out to all teams. So you should start to see that guidance coming out to families, and you can upload that onto your Family Voice website as well.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that'd be really, really good. Thank you. And then the next question is around professional advice. So how is the decision made on which parts of professional advice to include and which parts are not?
So shall I take that one, Jo?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so discussions around the content of the plan should take place as part of that co-production meeting that we've mentioned previously. Information provided for the plan by families, schools, advice givers, other professionals is all collated by the case officer into the draft plan, and then the case officer would look to avoid duplication where possible, ensure all needs are mapped to appropriate provision and outcomes. And actually within the new paperwork we have needs, provision and outcomes very closely linked together, so you can see where the different needs being met and what provisions in place for that. So it's more, as we say in SEND, specificity about how the plans are being.
Brilliant. And actually that leads me beautifully on to the next question. So many families tell us that their EHCP plans are not specific and measurable enough, which often leaves it open to interpretation when it comes to, you know, how it's delivered in schools. What are the challenges to doing this, and what steps are in place to ensure that plans are robust?
Okay. Again, I feel that the co-production meeting would be the place to discuss any particular concerns that as a family or a young person themselves have in respect of the plan. The co-production would be done with a case officer, but you could, if you're not going to have that full meeting, that's acceptable as well, and perhaps you could just call the case officer and discuss the content of the plan. We really do want that those plans are specific and measurable so that it is clear to everyone when progress has been made and when that celebration of the success that has been achieved can actually be recognised too. So it is important to have it as specific and measurable as possible. And it's nice to have something that's clear and meaningful to the young person themselves as well.
Brilliant, thank you. So again, this sort of follows on from professional advice, really. So why is the level of support a child's needs written in a way by educational psychologists, occupational therapists and speech and language therapists that often leaves it open to interpretation? So many parents report that if they have private reports that they've commissioned, that they are much more specific. And why is there such a disparity between the two?
So I think I'll take this one. So the provision outlined by psychologists and therapists will strongly focus on the interventions that will make the specific difference to the child's progress and will identify all that the child needs in order to progress. This should not differ, and essentially the way that plans are written should meet the needs of the child. So, you know, that's absolutely the essential of it, isn't it? But there is a clear understanding in all of the professionals' guidance and registration that no advice would underestimate the support that's needed for a child to progress. So when you're getting a report, it would never underestimate the needs, the needs and how they can progress. So yeah, that's basically it.
Brilliant, thank you so much. And then another question, actually we do hear this quite a lot, there's always some confusion around this. What information is sent to a school if they're being consulted with?
Okay, well, the draft plan will be sent to the school, and it's because that document is really important for the young person, and it's clear that what we need is that the families and the young people themselves actually feel that the plan accurately reflects their needs and offers a clear picture of who they are, and there is an opportunity then within that section A that we spoke of earlier on for the child and the family to be able to provide that information. So really what I'm saying is that when they're being consulted, the schools will get that draft plan where the family and the young person have had that opportunity to put that information into section A.
Brilliant. No, that's really helpful. Thank you. And then another question is quite a long question, so I'm going to read it so I don't talk rubbish like I did last time. So, why can only one draft of the EHCP be sent out to parents prior to finalisation? And how does this fit with the requirement that the EHCP process is collaborative? So, and then, for example, if the draft continues to contain typing errors that obscure the meaning of the EHCP, shouldn't the participants in the process be able to see a draft without typing errors before they agree or disagree?
So yeah, we would not want any draft to be sent to families that includes typing errors, and when we would never want that to happen. So as part of the co-production meeting, really that should be the opportunity to eke out what both sides require and what needs to be formally in the plan. So there is an opportunity during that co-production meeting to have that discussion. So both within the offered meeting and further conversations after the formal meeting should inform how the child is presented, so that when the draft plan is drafted, it looks familiar to the child and family. I think similar to what Joe was saying before, but actually it's part of the ongoing conversation. So the draft shouldn't be put out until that ongoing conversation has been had. So there is an opportunity. But the co-production meeting again is we're really seeing a key point, aren't we? I think in all of these answers,
yeah,
that in asking for that co-production, and simply if it's not offered, do ask for it. And just to reiterate what was said in previous recordings, there is an escalation route. So if you're talking to your case officer, the case officer's line manager is the senior case manager manager's line manager is the area SEN manager. So there is a potential escalation route if you're not getting those communications.
Brilliant, thank you. And yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I think the co-production meeting sounds like such a fantastic opportunity to really, talk through some of these difficulties. So yeah, no, great. So the next question we have is, so why does the EHCP process continue towards finalising the EHCP if an element, for example, from a particular professional is indicated to still be pending? So if this misses a key element of the need, how can it sort of be justified that it's sort of finalised if there's a key aspect of it missing is really what the question is.
I'll take this one if it's okay. Clearly, we wouldn't want to finalise a plan without information that's been gathered as part of the assessment. However, we do have some legal, or people use the word statutory deadlines that we have to meet as a local authority. So whilst we would always want the plans to be of very high quality, we do need to meet these statutory deadlines. Another reason for this is that if we do issue that plan, at least we can be assured that the young person is getting the assistance they need in school in a timely manner, rather than creating a delay there. In any situation, however, where the information is not available, it's always worth having that detailed conversation to take place between the case officer and the family to decide about a way forward there. And so there are occasions where the plan will be finalised that perhaps misses an element that's important to a family. That's when we would encourage those ongoing discussions with the case officer to determine what that way forward is in that respect.
Brilliant, thank you so much. So that's the questions on the draft plan. So we've got a few questions on the actual plan itself. So the first one is, what happens if the setting is not offering the provision set out in the plan?
I think I'll take that one. Excuse me, sorry, Jo, if that's all right.
Mm-hmm.
So the overall legal duty for the plan sits with the local authority. However, in saying they can meet need, the school does take a delegated responsibility to meet that need. So in agreeing to take a child, they'll have reviewed paperwork and stated to us how they can meet needs. If provision's not being provided, there should be initially a conversation between yourselves and the SENCO at the school. If parents and children still need help, then the case officer or senior case manager may be able to liaise with the school and understand why this isn't the case. As we said previously, we've had discussions where we want to work with schools to meet all of the needs that are in the plan. But however, there is, as I said before, a legal duty on the school to provide the needs as outlined in the plan in collaboration with the child, the family, and the local authority that are providing that provision and that assistance. Okay.
Thank you. And as a sort of follow on from that, what happens if the therapy element in an EHCP is not being fulfilled?
Catherine, can I take that one?
Yeah, I think so.
So there is a recognised national issue in respect to a national shortage of both therapists and psychologists. And in Surrey, we are feeling this is an issue for us too, in relation to specific therapy and psychologist services. However, each of our areas have a recovery plan and want to support the engagement of children in virtual learning or group work to support their individual development. There is a legal duty for the content of the plan to be delivered. And so if somebody feels, a school or a family feel that something isn't being delivered, it's important to have those open discussions with the SENCO in the school and the case officer in the first instance to establish what those concerns are. And again, thinking about what that way forward is to rectify the matter if at all possible.
Brilliant, thank you. And then the final question that we've got is, which actually we do hear quite a lot, I think this probably comes up quite frequently, is if a child or young person is struggling and it is felt that they need additional hours of support added onto their plan, how long does it take to apply for additional hours on an EHCP, and how do you go about doing this?
So yeah, it's a slightly complex process, and we are going to be covering annual reviews and interim reviews in our next monthly instalment of these. But for now, the only way to really change a plan is as part of the annual or interim review process. So once a review meeting has been held, the authority has 4 weeks to advise the family if they're keeping the plan the same or accepting any proposed changes, or indeed ceasing the plan. That might be an outcome. Additional hours would fall into the category of a change to the plan. So when that happens, that is presented at our EHCP governance. So evidence regarding the impact of those requests is considered at our Education, Health and Care Plan governance boards, and these are held weekly. But there's essentially 4 weeks following an annual review to have time to make that decision. It needs to be said that we'd always promote children and young people being as independent as possible, and this would be reflected in the support we agree. So if there is outlined in the plan that a child is developing independence in certain areas, it would be unlikely to have full-time support for that child, for example, because we do want the child to be as independent as possible.
Brilliant, thank you so much. Well, that's all the questions that we've got. Thank you both so much. I think the real key thing that I would take from this is this co-production meeting. So everyone watching this, you know, I would just really urge you, if you haven't, you know, for any reason been offered one, then please, you know, do get in touch with your case officer to have one, because I think it's you know, the benefits of having those rich conversations is just, you know, so important. But thank you both so much. Really
You're very welcome.
And yes, and I'm sure we will be seeing each other again soon for one of our other videos.
Absolutely. Thanks all for listening. Really good to see you all today. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks all.